The Fuji X-T3. This guy came out in 2018. Is it even worth considering picking this guy up in 2021? Well, yeah. That's it. What's up, everybody? It's your neighborhood friendly greaser, Aaron Chavez here, and if you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. I am a photographer and a very amateur filmmaker. Today I kind of want to talk about my dream camera. This camera is something that I've always wanted when it was first announced in 2018, but at that time I was just barely getting into photography, and this camera was so new that I just couldn't afford it, so I ended up going with the X-T2. Well, fast forward to last year, I was actually able to upgrade all my stuff that I had for the X-T3, and I could not be happier. See, Fujifilm in general is known for their old school retro styles that just stand out compared to any of the other mirrorless cameras on the market. See, when I had the X-T2, it was perfect for me. It was great for pictures, and it had some video functionality, but it wasn't the camera that I really wanted. It was the camera that I could afford, but it wasn't my dream camera. So when I was actually able to upgrade all my stuff for the X-T3, I knew the second that I held this for the first time, I knew that this was just going to be the camera for me. Disclaimer, I'm not going to go over all the specs of this camera because I don't truly believe that specs matter. Like, they do to an extent, but when it comes to just pure photography, specs only matter a little bit, depending on what you need. This camera, I knew the second that I picked it up, I was going to be hooked. Like, for me being a primarily portrait photographer, I didn't need anything super fancy with high megapixels like a R5 or at the time an EOS R or any of the Sony stuff. I needed something that I knew that took great pictures and was reliable, and this was and still is that camera. So where do I start when it comes to why I feel like you should pick up an X-T3? Well, for starters, they keep improving it. 3 years later, and they're still pushing out firmware to it. The latest firmware that they put on here greatly improved the autofocus on this guy, and like, I've never really had that much of an issue with the autofocus when it comes to this guy, but with that kind of improvement on a 3-year-old body, like, it really does take the worry out of knowing whether or not you're going to misfocus. The eye tracking on this is damn near close to Sony. Like, it's not on Sony's level, but it's close. But seriously, if the lighting is right and you have the eye autofocus on, yeah, dude, you can't miss. Now, the autofocus is great, but it's not my personal favorite. Honestly, my favorite thing that I keep constantly bragging about when it comes to the X-T3 is the picture profiles. Fujifilm in general has been known for their picture profiles. You know, if you're a JPEG shooter, which me being a portrait photographer, I very rarely shoot in JPEG, but if you are a JPEG shooter, like you're shooting at a family event or you're shooting street photography and you just need a quick turnaround, the picture profiles in the X-T3 is unbeatable. My favorite profile that I've been using a lot lately is Classic Chrome. Classic Chrome has just this old school moody tones to it. And then I actually have my own custom recipe in here where I have the shadows just slightly turned down and the highlights turned up. Sometimes I mess with the shadows a little bit more, but that gives me an idea of kind of how I'm planning on working with the picture in, you know, the editing software that I use. When I have that in mind and I'm able to see it in the camera, I am able to go through the rest of the shoot knowing that, like, okay, my pictures aren't gonna look that much different from this because this is what I want. Yeah, the picture profiles they can't be beat. Sony can't beat them. Canon can't beat them. Like, these profiles, they're just awesome. Now, speaking a little bit more on the colors part, when I take a picture from the Fujifilm X-T3 and import it into Capture One, those profiles are so incredibly easy and so fun to edit when I'm in there that it makes, you know, the whole editing process that much more enjoyable. See, with those profiles, I was actually able to push it pretty far when it came to, you know, tweaking the highlights and the shadows. The shadows don't retain a whole lot of information, but the highlights is usually where a lot of the information is. Now, I know I said this about the picture profiles, but seriously, editing a raw Fuji X-T3 file is something that everybody needs to try. Just to try it, because there's so much things that you can do, and the possibilities are literally endless. And when you edited them, I feel that it's very close to full frame as far as the information that is retained into it. Granted, the only full frame camera I ever owned was the A7R II, but you know, comparing those files versus the X-T3 files, I really enjoy the X-T3 a lot more. Also, file size. The file sizes that come out of this camera they're small, but they're powerful, if that makes sense. Yes, it is a crop sensor camera, but you know what? That doesn't really matter because I was able to create some of my favorite images using this camera. And honestly, I feel like the whole full frame crop sensor debate is kind of overblown anyways, but I'm not going to get into it. That's a different video. Now, the other thing that I haven't really quite talked about yet is the video features that are in this camera. Now, when this camera first came out, they really wanted to make this a pure hybrid camera. Granted, it doesn't have a fully articulating screen, which kind of sucks, but the video specs in this are hands down amazing. Like, compared to the X-T2 that came out, you know, way back when, what was it, 2014? This camera, like, can record 4K 60. It can record F-Log, which is really easy to color grade. It can do 128 frames per second and 24p 1080. And, you know, even if you aren't really into color grading, like slapping on one of those picture profiles, yes, I know, I brought it back again, I'm sorry. You can create such cinematic footage from this camera. Now, the one beef that I have when it comes to shooting video with this guy is that it doesn't have IBIS. So I have to either one, shoot with a tripod, or two, don't have caffeine so I don't really like have my shakes, or three, use a lens that has optical image stabilization, which I did have, but I ended up getting rid of it recently because, well, I'll tell you about that in another video. But if you're using this for YouTube, like in your home studio setup or whatnot, or you just need something to record quick while you're traveling, this camera is perfect for that. Now, I have shot many videos with this using my prime lenses when, you know, I was in a pinch, so it can be done. It's just not ideal if you're doing it in a professional setting or it's requiring you kind of like a run and gun type of deal because of that lack of in-body stabilization. Alright, so now that I talked about, you know, the picture profiles, the autofocus, the video features, the file sizes, let's talk about something that's even way more important than those four things. The price point. Yes, the price point. Now, this is probably the main reason why I would strongly suggest getting this camera versus, say, the X-T4 or any other camera on the market. This camera, for being so insanely feature-rich and powerful with all the stuff that it can do, you can find it new for about $1,500 or used on eBay for well under $1,000. Hell, I've seen one sold on eBay for $750. If you can find it for well under $1,000, if you can find it under $800, buy it, because you're not going to be able to find anything that comes close to the features that this camera can do for that price point. And I guarantee that. I'm talking pro level features that this camera comes with at such a cheap price point. You know, if you are a street photographer, portrait, fashion, wildlife, whatever you are, and you're debating seriously about picking up this camera used in 2021, don't even hesitate. Like, seriously, this camera has been such a dream to shoot with just this past year alone that I honestly don't feel like getting rid of it anytime soon, because it's a beautiful, powerful camera, and I recommend it to all of my friends. So definitely pick it up. Alright everybody, well, thank you so much for watching. I gotta go head out. But if you have any questions regarding the Fujifilm camera, or you want me to kind of talk a little bit more on some of the features that the X-T3 comes with, be sure to drop a comment down below. I'd be more than happy to answer any of those. And be sure to follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active right now. You know, Rockabilly Buddha Studios. There's also my 2 other accounts, but Rockabilly Buddha Studios is my #1. So definitely follow that. And then the other ones are going to be linked up in there in the bio. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until next time, love, peace, hair grease. Stay greasy, everybody.